All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I am Suzanne Simon with Restore America's Estuaries. I'm the program director for the NEP Watersheds Grant Program. I'm joined today by our manager of government affairs and communications, Brad Williamson, who will be helping me field questions. So you will likely hear his voice from time to time. The request for proposals, along with other information, is available on our website, which is www.estuaries.org. I'm going to turn off my camera, but I did want to put a face to a name. And then we'll do some housekeeping and get underway. Okie dokie. So, everyone should be on mute. If you would just take a moment to double check, I think everybody is, but it helps with the background noise. If you have a question or comment, please submit it via the chat function. If we do not address your comment or question, please email me or make an appointment with me to touch base, and we'll get into that later in terms of the functionality on that front. And um, let's see what else. The webinar obviously is being recorded, and we will post it to the Ray's YouTube channel and the program website in case you want to go back and review it, or if you want to share it with any colleagues. All right, so what we're going to cover today, we'll do an overview of the grant program as a whole, eligibility, amount of funding available, budget and match, and the overall application process and deadlines. But before we kind of get into those details, I'd like to take a moment to introduce us if you are unfamiliar with our organization. Restore America's Estuaries. We are a national organization dedicated to the protection and restoration of bays and estuaries as essential resources for our nation. You can see our 10-member groups there in green, in the green states, I should say. We can't do this without them. And also we have our affiliate member program, which does provide some great benefits. If you are interested, please check out our website. All right. Also, some other resources and opportunities I wanted to bring to your attention before we get to the Watersheds grants. We do have a number of other grant programs depending on where you're located. So I wanted to call these out. One is a Long Island Sound Community Impact Fund. That is open now. So folks that are in Connecticut, kind of the Long Island area in Connecticut and New York, make sure you take a look at that. Caring for Our Coast, that's in the Gulf of Mexico. That should be coming out very soon, within the next week or two. Similarly, folks in the Great Lakes, we have a brand new program up there. They are releasing within the next week or two. And last but certainly not least, we have our SWIG program, which is Southeast New England Watershed Implementation Grants. That is for Southeast Massachusetts and Rhode Island. That'll be coming out in the spring. So just wanted to call those out. Also, we have if you want to see us in person or want to get together in person, excuse me, we have our biennial summit, which is coming up in the fall of 2026. And then annually, it just passed us. We have our National Estuaries Week in September. So lots of great stuff to do and get involved, both in community where you are and in community elsewhere with folks around the country. So for more information, please check out the Ray website. All right, program overview. So I refer to it as the NEP Watersheds Program, Watersheds Grants Program, excuse me. The NEP stands for the National Estuary Program, which is a place-based program within the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency with a goal to protect and restore the water quality and ecological integrity of estuaries of national significance. Currently, 28 estuaries located along the Atlantic, Gulf, and Pacific coasts and in Puerto Rico are designated as estuaries of national significance. EPA has a fantastic website that provides more details. I encourage folks to learn more about that. So just a quick background, this program was established by Congress as a competitive fund designed to help these estuarine areas and to address urgent and challenging issues. Ray administers the program in coordination with and funding from EPA. A key point here, these funds are not associated with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, also known as Bill, or the Inflation Reduction Act. IRA. As a result, they are not restricted to infrastructure projects. We'll go over that a little bit. And also I realize things are a little interesting these days. So rest assured that these funds have already been appropriated and obligated. All right. So, moving on in terms of geographic eligibility. This is a big one. Excuse me. So, the areas in blue are the areas that represent the 28 NEPs, and that is the geographic eligibility. There is an interactive map. The link is in the RFP, and you can use the zoom function to really get in there to determine where that geographic eligibility those lines are. The other thing I want to point out here is that this program was signed into law in 2021, so the geographic eligibility areas reflect the NEP boundaries at that time. So just want to make that crystal clear. Also, I want to make it clear that projects may occur in one or more of these areas. So let's say you want to do something in San Francisco Bay and Puget Sound, totally fine. All right, looks like we have some maybe chats coming in. I'm not sure yet, but all right. No, thank you, Brad, for popping those into the chat. All right, so I have an example here just to it's a screenshot of what this looks like. So this is, for those of you who are on the West Coast, this is the Columbia River, Bonneville, Washington. So the area in this blue area here, that would be eligible. The area here in gray is not. So just to be clear, this is a very simple example, but really make sure that your geographic eligibility is in line before you start down this path. Like I've gotten questions from people in Colorado and northern Louisiana and all that good stuff. So just make sure that you are clear on your geographic eligibility. All right. No other chat so far, so we'll keep going. Eligible entities. There's a wide swath and there's more details in the RFP, but it is sort of your standard groups: public organizations, state, county, local, regional, nonprofit organizations. You must be able to demonstrate your nonprofit status. It has to be a 501c3. Academic institutions, tribes, and other indigenous groups. For-profit organizations and federal agencies may be on a team, but not the applicant. So if you are consulting firm XYZ, you can partner with like a nonprofit or your local town, that's fine, but the consulting firm cannot be the applicant. The definition here, and for the RFP, a team member means someone who will receive funds or will be providing match. And so you'll be including them in the budget one way or another. You may partner with a local NEP. So in other words, let's say choose one. But if you want them to officially be on your team, also recognize that NEPs will also be competing for these funds. So there's a long list. If anybody has questions and it's not addressed in the RFP, let me know. Oh, and also, given the competitive nature of this grant, there is one award per entity and per applicant. All right, we're starting to get into the nitty-gritty on some of the project requirements. Again, this is meant as a higher level overview. Please check the RFP for more details. Per the congressional language that started these programs, any project must address priority actions in the local NEP's Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan, the CCMPs. So that is a absolute must. So there is a list of there's a link, I should say, to the CCMPs in the RFP. So please make sure you are very specific with what priority actions. So in other words, you don't want to say, oh, we're going to restore eelgrass. Well, that's great. Nothing against that. But make sure you really point to the specific priority actions as laid out in that CCMP. All projects must be completed by December 31st, 2027. And this is not an arbitrary date necessarily. It has to do with our overarching cooperative agreement with EPA, which is sunsetting in early 2028. Any project must yield environmental results and be reported out. So this is focusing on natural systems benefits. Applicants must describe what success looks like and how it will be measured via metrics. So things can be acres, laws or regulations implemented, pounds of nutrients moved, removed, and so on. So be very, very clear about what those metrics are and what success looks like. All projects must comply with all relevant procurement laws. The big one that has come up in the past couple of years is BABA or BABA, which is Build America, Buy America. That is typically products that use steel or iron. So the one that kind of comes into play for a lot of restoration projects and in water projects would be rebar or gabions or stuff that's made out of metal, steel, or iron. So make sure that you have that in mind as you develop your budgets and your procurement, excuse me. And last but certainly not least, any project has to address one or both of the priorities for this RFP, which would be loss of key habitats and impacts of non-point source pollution, excess nutrients, and warmer temperatures. So I know this is a lot, and again, please ask any questions in the chat or make time to meet with me if you have questions. Okay, looks like we don't have anything else that has come up in the chat so far. All right, so we will move on. Oh, actually, I'm going to back up real quick. One of the things I also want to point out is these projects, as I already referenced, they can occur across multiple eligibility areas. We also encourage innovative, larger scale ideas along with projects that may occur on smaller scales. So really make a point of determining what success looks like and what impact will be. You may also use funds from a variety of sources for leverage. That's fine. We want to encourage a variety of proposed projects so long as they meet these requirements. All right, one thing I want to call out, moving on, is every project has to have a quality assurance project plan. So there's a lovely little screenshot off to your right of what that is. It is basically an overarching QA/QC plan. The QAP must be developed within the first quarter of the project. No on-the-ground activities funded by the program may occur until that QAP is fully approved and signed. And what that looks like is you will develop it. It will be reviewed by our contractors per EPA request, and then it goes up to EPA headquarters QA folks, and they will review and comment, and then revisions occur, and then everything gets signed off. Okay, so it is not a short process. The program this funding program as a whole originates out of headquarters as opposed to the region. So this is a requirement they put on. So if you're used to dealing with whatever region, note that headquarters has different standards and expectations. So trying to be very transparent there about your expectations. All right. Please make sure you include sufficient time in your timeline and funding, either for staff time or if you want to have contractors write it on your side, that's fine. Note that the quote unquote new guidance, so there was guidance that was issued in 2024. The link is in the RFP. And for those of you who haven't done a QAP in about 5 years or so, please brush up on what the QAP requirements are. They're different than they have been in the past. If the project already has a QAP, so let's say you had a QAP to do, I'm making this up, oyster reef restoration somewhere, and you only need to do an amendment or an addendum to that QAP, make sure you include that in the LOI. All right, so one of the other things to be clear is these documents are, in case I'm not made this clear yet, these are not light lifts. They're generally, even for simple projects, 20 pages plus appendices. So please be aware of what you're going to be getting into. What would be most helpful to include in the LOI regarding the QAP? Acknowledgement, the process, plan, and sufficient time. Yes. So basically make sure you're making it abundantly clear that you are well aware of what it's going to take to get the LOI done, and you are making enough time in your timeline and your budget to make that happen. All right. Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to do that. Hit the wrong button. All right. Any other questions on that? No. Okay. All right, so want to take a few moments to talk about some potential example approaches. Food for thought. So again, there's more to this in the RFP, but they can be on the ground projects. So that would be your typical habitat restoration, nature-based projects, nutrient abatement, sort of typically what you think of when you think of restoration projects. They can also be planning, design, and feasibility. This can be engineering or for project designs and modeling. So in other words, it doesn't necessarily have to be um, shovel in the dirt sort of activities. We recognize that this is a fairly short project window, so 18-ish months maybe, and that it might not be feasible to do the planning, permitting, design, and implementation. So it's fine if it's just planning design, so long as you make it very clear what the ultimate benefits will be to improving estuarine conditions. Okay, capacity building. Again, as long as it's a clear through line to improvements in estuarine conditions, similar changes to codes, ordinances, management, protection, you get the idea. So there's a wide variety that is welcome in terms of what we will be reviewing and are eligible. Okay, so this is not meant as a full list, so please check the RFP to see if you're considering, a project. You're like, "Oh, I wonder if this is eligible," and then reach out to me if you still have questions. All right, so types of projects that aren't allowed. So research. So this would be, what I would consider to be like ivory tower. So research for research sakes. That isn't an eligible type of project. But if it is research like more implemented or practical or on the ground, like, so that's fine. So if you are looking at how a certain technique might work and you have like a reference site, that's fine. Again, it's more practical and on the ground versus ivory tower. All right, standalone outreach and education. So in other words, if the entirety of your project would only be in education, that wouldn't be allowed. However, we do want to see outreach and education as a component of your project. Similarly, routine monitoring. Let's say you've been doing monitoring of water quality for 20 years, you want to do another year's worth. That is considered routine, wouldn't be eligible. But again, you've got that baseline monitoring, post-project monitoring, that would be expected. The key here is it must result or inform on-the-ground activities and not just be monitoring for monitoring's sake. Land acquisition is not eligible, although it may be used to meet the non-federal match component so long as it occurs during the project period. So in other words, if there's a parcel that was purchased 5 years prior and you want to include it, that won't fly. But it can happen during the project period. Social surveys, questionnaires, and similar efforts. So the typical ones in this would be, we want to do a homeowner survey to see how they feel about the estuary. That won't fly because it runs afoul of some of federal laws. Activities that are part of legal settlements, settlements, mitigation, things like that. Those are not allowed for funding either. And also more than 3 proposals per entity. So there's more to that in the RFP. All right, we have a question here. For planning and design projects, does a timeline need to be in place for the construction phase of the project in order to be eligible? What are some ways that a planning design project can demonstrate? Okay. So let me start with the second question first. So what are some ways that a planning design project can demonstrate? So I'll give a simple example of something we have funded in the past, which was the planning and permitting for hydrology restoration. And so in that case, there's a pretty clear through line from the efforts that were done to do the planning and permitting through what would be the improvement in the estuary. So that's a sort of straight through line we're looking for. Does a timeline need to be in place for the construction phase? I'm assuming you mean in order to do, for planning design. A loose timeline would probably be good. So in other words, for, if you're submitting something for a planning and design and say, we want to get this done by December 31st, 2027, and then we anticipate doing implementation in let's say 2028, something that's fine. I think the concern is we don't want to have, we're going to plan and design this and then have it sit on a shelf somewhere. So, all right, hope that answers your question. If not, feel free to get in touch. And I fully understand that there's a lot of nuance involved in these. So, um, again, know that I'm here to help and happy to do so. All right, this is the show me the money slide. The amount of money for this round is approximately 1.4 million in federal funds. Per project cost is 200 to 500,000. So if you do the math and then add in our experience, we're anticipating 4 to 6 projects to be selected and funded. All right. We're going to get into the weeds a little bit on the budget and match, which is often um, where a lot of the hiccups come. So there is a budget table example in the RFP. Please follow that, particularly with respect to the federal cost categories. Those would be personnel, fringe, travel. If you look on the right, that screenshot with the stuff in bold, those are your federal cost categories. We do have a fillable spreadsheet available online on our webpage. If you click the button, it downloads an Excel template. You will not be, if you've done this in the past, you will not be uploading that. That's meant for planning only. You will be adding your budget numbers directly into the portal, and I'll get to that in a sec. So we wanted, though, to provide a template and to hopefully make your lives easier. Please make sure your costs are up to date. The pandemic and related supply chain issues have substantially impacted some sectors. You know, gravel that used to be $20 a ton is now $40 a ton, that kind of a thing. Just make sure your numbers are as dialed in as possible. You don't want any unhappy surprises down the road. The administrative aspects are tied to the date of the program's creation, which I mentioned. The law was passed in 2021, and then EPA competed it and all that other good stuff. So the bottom line here is this program predates the 2 CFR 200 changes in 2024. Most notably, the de minimis rate cannot exceed 10%. Okay, so most programs after that 2 CFR 200 change in 2024, they can be 15. Again, because this program came into being before those changes, the de minimis is a max of 10%. Just want to make that very, very clear. Match component. There is a 30% total non-federal match. Really think about how you can get that match figured out. I say in complete tongue-in-cheek, which is be legally creative. So really think of what your partners can bring to the table. It can be boat time, captain time, lab time. There's all kinds of things that you might not be thinking of. Sort of shake the couch cushions to make that match happen. Match must occur and be expended during the award period. So in other words, I use that example of the land acquisition prior. That wouldn't fly. Everything has to happen during the project period. And note that match cannot be from settlements, mitigation, etc., similar to the eligibility for the project as a whole. Nor can most NIFWIF or NERDA funds, or NERDAR, depending on your state, be used as match because they are considered to be parts of settlements, litigation, etc. So please see the RFP for details. There are some exceptions to that. So just let me know if you have questions and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, we do have ability to do pre-award for up to 3 months prior, but that's on a case-by-case basis. So if you're interested in that aspect and you get selected down the line, we can talk about that. All right, and so in this example, there's that screenshot to the right, like I said. So if the requested funding is $200,000, that would be federal funds. The required non-federal match would be $60,000 for a project total of $260,000. Oh, and volunteer hours is absolutely fine. Make sure you document your calculations here. Thank you, Brad. He has popped the budget table link into the chat. Is there a set rate that we should use regarding volunteer hours? There is a national rate you can Google or search for, pardon me, and you can use that. You can also, if it's justifiable, so for example, let's say you have someone doing pro bono legal work, that would typically be a higher volunteer hour than someone who is out there collecting trash or putting, doing planting. So make sure that you can kind of calibrate and justify your volunteer rate. All right. So, applicants may request a waiver from the non-federal match requirements. Note that requesting a waiver will not impact how a proposal is received, nor will a waiver automatically be granted. So there is information in the RFP, and the applicant will need to provide details as to why the waiver is being requested. So in other words, we consider this program to be match neutral because we realize that match can often be a barrier to application. Okay, on to the process and timeline. So this is a two-step process. Letter of intent. The letter of intent has turned into a bunch of text boxes in a portal, but you get the idea. You can consider it a pre-proposal, or however you'd like to frame it, followed by the full proposal if invited. So you should use the online submittal portal, and all of the aspects that you will be required to put into the submittal portal are outlined in the RFP. Note the submittal portal should be coming online either today or early next week, so just stay tuned on that front. But it should be very straightforward, and I'll go into the portal here in a second. All right, so the timeline. LOIs are due on November 21st. December 19th, you'll be notified regarding status as to whether you've been invited for a full proposal or not. January 16th, full proposals due, and you get the rest of the idea. The timeline is also in the RFP. We anticipate finalizing work plans and such like that late winter, early spring of 2026. So we're trying to be transparent about that. And then remember, you still have to do your QAP. So make sure that you are planning your efforts appropriately. The evaluation frameworks are in the RFP. You will notice that you need a letter from your local NEP. This is a letter of acknowledgement, not a letter of support or similar. Please make sure you reach out to them sooner than later. It is incumbent on you, not them, to meet your deadlines. Let's see what else. Right. So then work plan review and finalization. So I want to go through this because there is another stage. So once you submit your proposal, if you submit your LOI, you're invited for a full proposal, you're selected for funding. We will be asking for work plan tweaks and finalizations. We recognize that there are times that things change a little bit in process. So that is the time for you to make those changes. We also recognize that word counts limit, in some case, what you'd like to describe. After that is Ray and you work on it, then it goes to EPA headquarters for their review. Usually not a huge lift or huge time suck. However, want to make it very clear in terms of what the process is. So there's hopefully no surprises. All right, we have another chat. Can you please point us to the instructions template for the LOI? Okay, the RFP covers both the LOI and the full proposal. So it includes both sections. And there is, I don't know what page it's on right off the top of my head, but it's the LOI requirements, and then there's a budget section, and then the full proposal requirements. All right. Yeah, happy to help. I know it's a long document, so not to worry. Okay, so once the submittal portal is up, you're going to go to our website, and then there's going to be a spiffy little red button like this. It will take you to our grant management software, which is Amplifund. So this is legit. So you're going to create an account, and then you're going to land here. This is the LOI, and then you're going to walk through the various text boxes and the requirements. Like I said, this is all outlined in the RFP. There should be no surprises. And so just make sure you go through that very carefully. One of the big hints that we have is develop all your materials separately So use a whatever sharing software you have, whether it's a Word or a Google Doc or whatever. Really work with your team to get all of that buttoned up, and then put it into the portal. Um, Make sure you save often. There is an automatic save function, but just make sure you save. Setting up the account is quick and easy. It's password protected. One other thing that I wanted to call to your attention is there is a word limit versus character limit kind of crosswalk. So we've tried to be conservative on that, but just want to call that to your account. And then navigating. So as I shared with the other screenshot, these are the headings at the top of the portal. So you'll just kind of work your way through those little circles and you can jump between those circles. So if you're filling out your budget and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I put on a different sheet or whatever, you can go back and forth. And again, this should mirror what's in the RFP. So hopefully there are no surprises. The link to the NEP contact document in the RFP does not work. Okay. So that could either be due to a shutdown error, like in other words, I know some of the EPA headquarters have gone dark. If necessary, we will put the contact document on our website. Hopefully, there's the link. Thank you, Brad. This is why I have Brad helping me out, doing all the linky things. Okay. All right, so this is meant as a high level overview. If you still have questions, we have set up a way for you to directly set up time in my calendar, basically. So you hit, here it is, here's the screenshot, you hit schedule a meeting, it'll take you to a calendar, and then you can find a time that's available on my calendar that also works for you. We found this to be much faster than doing a lot of emails back and forth. I think, oh, it looks like we have another question that came in, excuse me. Yep, thank you, Brad. All right, so, like I said, happy to talk if you have questions. There's my email address. That's the link to our website. We will be posting, like I said, this webinar and the slides. Feel free to email me. And I will pause there to see if there are any here we go. Last minute questions, comments. Is there a completed redacted sample QAP you can provide? That's fascinating. So Faye, maybe. It depends on your project. The projects that have gone through the process are everything from planning and design through restoration. So go ahead and send me an email and I will see if I can find one that most aligns with what you want to do. We do also have some QAP templates in Word and also some instructions. So I'm thinking we probably need to get those posted as well as a resource. So thank you, Faye, for your question. Sure, happy to help. Any other questions, concerns, that I can answer here in a group setting? All right, here's another one. If a not-for-profit is partnering with a municipality or some other entity, would it be advantageous for one entity or another? So long as a not-for-profit is a nonprofit, and so I know there's a slight difference there. As long as you can, or someone can demonstrate their 501(c)(3) status, then you're fine being the applicant. If that is not super clear in this particular instance that you are offering up, I would say the public entity the um, should probably be the applicant just to make it a little more smooth. If you have questions, just email me. Can the full cost of a consultant helping with the QAP completion be included in the budget? Yes, it can. We have people put that in as a line item either for a partner for them to do. Like in some cases, there are organizations that have a lot of experience doing that. Or some people want to put a line item for a consultant in there, and that is absolutely fine. Either one is fine. Because we recognize that not everybody necessarily has the in-house capability to do so. All right, these are great questions. Thank you, folks. Any other last questions, concerns? All right, so hearing none, I will go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you very much for being here, and I certainly appreciate your time. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I look forward to your submittals. Thank you so much. Take care.